I think that does it for me. I'll turn it back to John. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Julie. So the first item on our agenda is a sign permit, correct? And I don't have that up, but sign permit for postmark building. I don't know what the address is because I don't have that up. But
It's okay. I can do the screen share unless someone from the development team would rather screen share the materials.
Oh, that's fine if you would, Julie.
Sure. It's 136 Haven Street. The sign is actually proposed on the Sanborn Street side of the building, though. All right. Can you all see that?
yes.
And actually, I will switch pictures for this. Maybe to that first. It looks like we have Brad Latham and Hugo DiBiase here from for the postmark sign proposal. John.
Julie, do you have anything first, or shall we just go straight with the applicant?
I think you can just go straight to the applicant.
Okay.
Thank you very much. The actual sign, of course, as Julie said, is on Sanborn. It's serving as the entranceway to the apartments, the condominiums that are number 8 Sanborn is their address. There has been an attractive low-rise brick wall built and landscaping behind that to the entrance to a courtyard and the main entranceway to the condominium units. This is a monument sign on the top of that wall. The size is shown, it's by 12 by about 2.5 feet high. Very attractive. It's backlighted, so it doesn't cause any light glare or excessive light. The illumination would be tied to the landscaping ground lighting. And so that would go on at dusk and go off at dawn. As I say, it's subdued lighting, so it will not be disrupted to anyone else. And of course, it actually faces a commercial area in any event. We're more than happy to answer any questions. That's basically the essence of it. I think the sign speaks for itself. I do have, if I am capable of bringing it up here, can you see that?
Stop my screen share so you can share something if you'd like to.
Okay, thank you. I've tried to call it up. I'm not very good at this, but let me try. Is that showing at this point for you?
Not for me, no.
Okay. All right, then in any event, we have a picture that shows the an aerial view of it that's not coming up. So in any event, it just shows a more attractive landscaping. It's tied to any better perspective of this. The scale of the sign is appropriate for the location as well. From a positive point of view, the dim lighting that is cast from this will also provide some illumination for the sidewalk on that side. There is no street lighting on that side of the street. And that's pretty much what we'd like to do as far as an outline. We're more than happy. Ugo's here to answer any questions as well that you may have.
All right. Thank you, Brad. I guess before we get into the design of the sign, let's talk about the what's allowed and what the process is. Julie, I guess the way that I read our bylaw is that that for a freestanding sign in downtown, we need they need a special permit. Or am I missing something?
1 second, John. I think you're correct for the Business B zoning district. This project was developed under the 40R overlay district, which we don't clearly address in our sign bylaw. There's no mention of signage in the Downtown Smart Growth District section 10.5 section of zoning either, but we do have design guidelines for the 40R district that under section 9 have some guidelines for signs for 40R projects.
are those, I should know this, but I presumably those guidelines are not in conflict with the underlying zoning requirements for business speak? Or,
I don't believe they're necessarily in conflict. They might be, that's a really good question. They could be in addition to, or sort of maybe slightly more permissive or less. I mean, it's really, I'll bring them up. I have them
okay.
in my decision. It was a little bit tricky. There are a few, they're on the screen right now. They're split into 2 pages of the draft certificate of appropriateness, but there are a few provisions under section 9 that I thought would be applicable to this sign. So I pulled them out specifically, and they're listed here. I'll leave them up so you can look at them. Let me know and I'll scroll down so you can see the rest.
So my question is this considered the principal use location for the sign?
I'm not sure I understand
Sure.
that question, Pam.
Well, there's something relative to principal use that's listed in the 40R, if I'm not mistaken. Just had that up.
So this sign, I believe, is for the residential entrance on Sanborn Street. They did not submit a master signage plan for the whole building, which would include signage for the commercial uses. We did recommend that path, and they may come in with a master signage plan for the rest of the building, but they want to go forward with the monument or freestanding sign at this time.
Okay, and the other thing that we don't have is the layout of where this is relative to the main building. Just seeing the sign doesn't really tell us.
There's a plan included with the submittal.
There is. I can show that. It might be here actually. Nope, never mind.
Yeah, that's it.
Where is that relative to the building?
Oh,
That's what I'm asking. You don't have the footprint of the building and the location of this sign relative to it.
Plan, you went past it, and there's a picture of the courtyard on Sanborn Street.
But this says the residential entrance. So is that the front or the back? That's what I'm saying.
The residential entrance is off of Sanborn Street. It's right next to where the sign is. The sign is right at this location, in the middle of that wall.
Like right here.
All right, which I didn't get a picture of.
I believe I put it in the Google Drive, but maybe I didn't.
Nope.
Yeah, it's there.
Is it there? I
Yeah,
didn't see it.
Yeah,
first
it's
on the
there.
road.
It's just an image.
Okay. Okay.
I guess so. My issue or my concern, I should say, is that in order to approve a monument sign, the only way I see to approve a monument sign is through a special permit using the base zoning. And so with that, I guess Julie, we didn't necessarily advertise this for a special permit, and could we move forward with a discussion of a special permit?
So I would say if that's the route that you want to take, I mean, noting that this situation isn't explicitly provided for really under our downtown smart growth district zoning or design guidelines. If you want to do the special permit route, as if this were following business B regulations, we would need to advertise and have them come back to another meeting. So I would say do not discuss it any further. If that's what you want to do.
Our understanding was that the 40R gave a greater latitude to discretion of the approval authority, and in the context of that, the signage was relevant, and we did not anticipate that the underlying zoning would control on that aspect of it. So That's the basis upon which this application was filed.
Understood. I guess that a lot of if we are not, I mean, signage really isn't even mentioned in, aside from the design guidelines, but in the overlay district, right? We don't mention any control of signage at all, correct, Julie?
Yeah, I did not find any mention of signage. No. And the sign bylaw, I believe, refers to section 10.5, which is the design, the downtown smart growth district, which then says nothing. So it's a bit unclear how to proceed with this type of application.
So if the overlay district doesn't mention signage, doesn't it by default just go back to what the underlying zoning is?
I think that was the whole point of that exercise, Julie. When we didn't include signage in here, we knew that we would have to rewrite the signage at that point, right? We were a few years away from that. And we just felt that if we referred to the signage that we had elsewhere, it could be applied here, and that we'd have a little more discretion maybe with some design standards. But the idea that the business B signage always controlled non-residential signs, right? We always refer back to business B signage in that district.
Okay.
But given that it's a 40R, and we do have some discretion, I don't know why we can't give the applicant some direction so that when they do reapply, maybe it could be administrative if they comply with all of those requirements. Or if it isn't, at least they'll come back knowing that they've already answered the questions.
True. I don't think it can, right, if it's a special permit, I don't think that could go through as administrative, so it wouldn't need to come back. It would need to come back to us. But Nick, I agree. Right, we have latitude here. If I think that it's fine if we have comments that we want to get to them. I think that's fine to provide that now, and then understanding that this does need to come back through a special permit, and open it up to public comment again at that point. So with that being said, any comments on the design?
Yeah, I have a couple of comments. The biggest thing is that that cartoon right there, the brick is out of scale. Those bricks are almost 2 feet long. And so I don't think you understand how large this sign is. It's the top of that sign's about 6 feet up. If you look at the existing picture of that courtyard. And it isn't even so much the size of the sign, because I don't mind that design. I don't mind the halo lighting and the graphics, the proportions. My only concern is that there's this great little courtyard back there, and we're going to put a 12-foot long by 6-foot high wall in front of it, right? And I'm just going to cut off that courtyard from the street. That's my sketch. I kind of proportion that off of the brick. You count the bricks, 18 bricks across is 12 feet, right? And 8 bricks high is about 2'4". So really, that's my only concern. The size of it isn't even that objectionable to me. If it were on the wall, maybe. But I'm just a little concerned that there's this great little space here.
Yeah.
Which we discussed, if you remember when they developed it, right? There's the only green space, and we talked about how it engages the street and the public, and it's really just for private use anyways, but I don't know. It just seemed wrong to cut it off.
Yeah, my thought that follows on with that, Nick, is thank you for doing this, because it does give some better perspective. But right, is that parking that Right, is there a parking space right in front of that?
Is that loading?
There's a loading space there, and there's parking on to the west.
Yeah, I see where you're going, John, that once it's down too low, then the parking kind of hides it as well.
Yeah. So I'm not sure what this really does for you. Who's going to be seeing it? And then to add on the fact that, to Nick's point that, that it sort of cuts out that openness that we were looking for of that courtyard too.
What if you go off center? Like, what if you move to the left towards the stair so that most of the courtyard is open? And then, besides that point, I think, Julie, you showed a section of the code that said they were allowed 16 square feet, right? This
Yeah.
27 maybe. This is about 27, almost 2.5 times 12.
Nick, are you suggesting the sign be moved towards the entranceway?
Yeah, just because then the most of the courtyard is open. I think it has to be reduced in size, though. If it has to comply with that 16 square feet, then it would have to be reduced as well. Unless you created something crazy, like it didn't have a background and it was just the letters somehow, so it's transparent. Because then your signage would be right tight to the graphics. Your signage area would be tight to the graphics. Anyways, those are my thoughts on that.
I have one other question that I just noticed in the design standards, Julie, that you showed up there for the downtown smart growth. Is it supposed to have the address as well? And I guess my question is, where's the intention for the address to go if not on the sign?
Can it just go out the doorway?
Yeah, maybe over the doorway.
That's where I would anticipate it would be, at the doorway.
I don't think we count that as signage, though, right? We require them to have their address marked for safety reasons.
I would assume so. I just was noticing what it said in that section 9.
Correct.
So yeah, if the address is over the doorway, if we have flexibility to do that, I just wanted to know that was going to go somewhere for the safety reasons.
I was wondering if there might be somewhere to the left of the entrance where this could go, where it wouldn't block that open area. I'm not sure though.
I'm just checking Google Maps to see if the building's on it yet. Is the left corner of that picture, is that the actual old post office building?
Yes, that's the back of the commercial portion.
So immediately to the left of this, looks like there might be just a blank wall, blank brick wall. And so Julie's right, if it went to the left, then it wouldn't really be covering up any architectural features. I don't know if that has historical implications.
I can, this is Hugo DiBiase. I'm part of the ownership team, and I'm actually the daily project manager for the project. If I could just shed some light on some of the things that were being brought up there. So just just to the left, where we're talking about is actually staircase number 2. That's a new build, not part of the 1969 or 1918 building. And that stairwell actually has what we call storefront windows. So you'll be able to see right into there, people walking up and down the stairs. And then we talked about the entrance way there. So that's 8 Sanborn Street, and I believe we're putting, I forget because there's a lot of moving parts, but I think the entrance number is going to be where you see the wood entranceway there. It's going to be at the top. So that's actually, if you drive by now, that's now in white PVC, and I believe there's black lettering going there for the entranceway. And then for the actual courtyard, so you can see there that there's 3 risers to get up to grade for the courtyard. So the backside of where that sign is right now is more or less, there's probably 6 to 8 inches down to where the mulch is. So on the courtyard side, you're kind of at grade all along there. It's that we looked at also putting the sign potentially on that on the brick side, on the brick face, but our thought there was it was a little too low, as that'd be around knee high, probably, people walking along the street. So I don't know if that answers some of the questions or thoughts there.
Other comments? And I guess I'm going to say that I'm not going to open this up for public comment because we will. This is just to provide some design input, because they will have to come back, and we'll open it up for public comment at that point.
Mr. Chairman,
Sure.
my only comment is I'm kind of disappointed that the sign will be lit all night long. I understand the developer's idea that it will basically be lighting for the sidewalk, but usually in a business B district, we try and have the lights turned off on the signs at the close of business. I know this is residential and it's open 24 hours, but I would think that there should come a time when the lighting should go off.
I think that you correctly pointed out the position that the applicant is taking, and that is that this is residential in character, and it does provide lighting that is positive, and it's not glaring lighting. It doesn't shine towards the residential aspect, just gives someone entering late at night will have some illumination for that area. So it's not really a tantamount to a commercial sign in that regard.
No, but there will also be illumination under the canopy over by the entrance. Is that not correct?
There'd be illumination there. I'm talking about the sidewalk illumination, however, down farther. If you park your car down and walk down by the wall, it provides some illumination for the sidewalk.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I actually don't have any objection to it being on. I think there's a lot of light coming off of the Learning Cooperative site at all hours.
If there are no other comments, we thank you for your comments given, and we'll be back again in the context of a special permit.
Okay.
Thank you.
Before Brad goes, or the team goes, any other comments? I just want to make sure that we have them all.
And just as long as you're coming back, if it's possible to get a photo, this photo, but show what's happening over there on the left side so that we can put the sign in context of what's around it, that would be helpful.
Yes, we can do that.
Thanks.
All right.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's very helpful for staff.
Next item on our agenda is the outdoor dining, retail, commercial, storage, zoning change, right? Is that what we're calling it?
Outdoor commerce, dining, programming, or storage listed in alphabetical.
All right.
So
So yeah, Julie, if you can give us a little background. I know CPDC went over where this came from and where we went, but for those on RCTV or even for the board, I think a little bit of background may be helpful.
yeah, that's great. So the CPDC began discussing this a couple meetings ago. This will be the third conversation. This is a potential zoning bylaw amendment for April 2021 annual town meeting regarding the need for creating a path for businesses in town to be able to use their outdoor spaces. And this is related to private land because CPDC and zoning govern private land. To be able to use their spaces more flexibly, to be able to use their parking lots for outdoor commerce or outdoor dining, and to have a path to allow these things to happen, rather than putting staff in an awkward position of having to say, oh, you're not allowed to do that, your site plan decision doesn't allow that. We know you're trying to survive as a business, but we just have to stop you from doing that because it's not allowed. So we're trying to get ahead of, the first part of the pandemic, we couldn't really get ahead of it. It kind of came up, I don't want to say out of nowhere, but more or less out of nowhere. And we kind of troubleshooted and did it belt and suspenders as much as we could. And here we are trying to get ahead of next spring and really try to plan for something that will create a path for businesses to be able to do more. So I will say that we do have, I think, 4 members of the select board here with us tonight, because there is a conversation that may be happening at one of their upcoming meetings about the potential for them to delegate some of their authority under their current outdoor dining policy to the CPDC so that reviews for these projects, whether the applicant is using private land or public land, may be done by one entity in town instead of having 2 separate processes and 2 separate entities involved. So that's just something that's on the table, and I think that they're here tonight and they can see what we're talking about, maybe get a comfort level with it, give us some advice, tell us what we're forgetting. These are all good things that we want to hear before we actually get to the floor of town meeting. So I also should say that this is not technically the public hearing for the zoning bylaw amendment. We will be advertising a public hearing for January 11th, which is an already scheduled CPDC meeting night. And we will, again, like we did for tonight, be doing outreach to over 300 business contacts in town. We will send it to the town meeting members and we will invite all boards, committees, and commissions. So we will hopefully have another big, large gathering to discuss this in just a couple months. So I do see that we have a number of people here with us tonight, and I find that very exciting. And what I'll do, even though this is the 3rd time the CPDC is talking about this, I'll just take it from the top and kind of go through what our thought process was. Let me screen share it really quick for everybody. So here we are. Just let me know, you can all see that on your screens?
Yes.
Probably really small text, but I'll just talk through it and then we can zoom in on things later as we want to delve in deeper to any aspects. So essentially, what I do usually when we look at zoning bylaw amendments is we look at like all the places in the bylaw that would be impacted and that might need to change. And so starting with definitions, we have a definition currently of open storage. And really quick, let me just explain this formatting. So anything that's crossed out are things that would be proposed to be deleted, and then the new text is underlined or in bold and underlined. And so the deleted stuff is a lot of stuff that's like in the bylaw currently. And so we have a definition for open storage, which kind of a little bit gets at some of what we're talking about here, but isn't really adequate, I think, for everything we're considering. And so we wanted to start by kind of redoing that definition, really describing better what it is we're talking about. So turning that into outdoor commerce, dining, programming, or storage. which is the relocation or extension of indoor commerce, dining, programming, or storage to outdoor areas on the same lot as an accessory use, subject to limitations imposed by the CPDC as part of minor site plan review. And that's the key part. One of the key parts of this is that we want to put it into our minor site plan review process. And so that gets us down here into section 4, which is review and applicability. So what we're talking about here, these A, B, and C are the current thresholds that we have that trigger a minor site plan review by CPDC. Now, minor site plan review is not statutory, so it's not tied to any specific 40A notification requirements. However, here in Reading, it's always our standard practice that we notify abutters and that we put an advertisement in the paper and that we have what we call a public hearing. So in this case, we would be adding outdoor commerce dining program or storage as another threshold that would trigger minor site plan review and trigger a full robust process with CPDC. I will say that because it's not technically tied to a statute, it does give us flexibility to reduce some of those timeframes that things that are tied to the statute would require. So maybe instead of a 2-week notification timeframe, it could be 1 week. So there is a little more flexibility to do things in a little more of an urgent manner if we needed to, which is one of the reasons we thought minor site plan review might be a perfect place to put this. So this is just sort of some of the procedures. Staff will work in the interim time, and we've already started to put together an application that's specific to this use. That'll be very clear what we require before these applications come to CPDC for review. But here are just a few of the basic things that we require for all types of minor site plan reviews, so not just outdoor commerce dining, programming, or storage applications. So that's pretty basic. And then one thing that we did specify in terms of that notification that I mentioned is that for applications under this specific use, we would provide notification also to businesses or tenants located on the site and within the reasonably related geographic area. So typically we are required to notify abutters within 300 feet of a property, and that includes property owners. And so that doesn't really necessarily include businesses and tenants and other stakeholders that might utilize that public space or private parking lot or private space. We want to make sure for these applications that we were reaching out to the right group of stakeholders. So moving along. Sorry for the scrolling. Hope you're all not zoomed out like I am. So then again, but with reference to like if someone got a minor site plan approval and then they wanted to modify it, we would defer to the existing regulations in the bylaw to determine if that modification triggered a full review by the CPDC again, or if it could be done at the staff level. And so we have a lot of sort of leeway with that determination. And so small modifications to an outdoor commerce dining program or storage permit wouldn't necessarily have to come back through a full review. But if someone wanted to like extend the area they're using, like by double it or do something that we felt was like more concerning or would impact abutters, we would probably bring it back for another review. And now I'm just, oh, you know what, I'll explain this deleted part. So right now in the minor site plan review process, we have, the CPDC has the ability to waive parking or loading requirements in certain zoning districts to allow for flexibility of use and other things. So that's actually a really nice thing that's already built into zoning, because in some instances we do anticipate we would have people asking to use maybe like a portion of the parking lot for an outdoor use, right? So they're already allowed to waive it, and what I did is I just lumped these two things together because they're very similar. I thought we could just have one paragraph that kind of captured the whole thing. And it basically says what I just said, where they can waive the parking requirements under zoning for a specific period of time for such a use. And then we do have specific criteria for approval for outdoor commerce dining program or storage. So just just really quick, we can go into them in more detail later if there are questions, but I'll just give like a little bit. So duration of use. With that, we're talking about not just hours of operation during the day, but like the seasonality of the use. And would this be recurring like every year? And I don't know if I mentioned it already, but the CPDC was originally thinking that this might be a good thing to do, like regardless of COVID, to just give a little bit more flexibility and add a little more vibrancy to downtown. So it would be, decided on a permit basis. I think kind of what was whether it's something that would be just for one season or could come back every year. It really depends like on the conversation with the business owner and what the business needs are and what the proposal is. And with regards to all of the criteria here, that was kind of the goal, is to have them be outlined, but also and be, sort of have them be a little bit flexible so that like because we can't always anticipate what businesses need. I mean, we really can't. I'm not a business owner. I'm not an entrepreneur. So to have parameters, but not be like too stringent or specific with what we're talking about, and actually just let people be creative and come to us and tell us what it is they want to do. And then we can kind of assess like how that would fit into the context of the area, and what impacts and externalities or benefits that might have for other surrounding uses. Okay, so B, we talk about site circulation and access. That would be something that they would need to account for, and that would be pedestrian as well as vehicular. Parking, so availability of parking to serve the uses on the site. So, obviously if a use comes in and wants to use part of the parking lot, we might want to see, is the rest of the parking lot sufficient for what's happening, or are the hours they're going to use this part of the parking lot, like off hours from when the parking lot's heavily used by this other business, kind of things like that. Health and safety, of course, they need to comply with all health codes and life safety codes. We would want to know about structures and furnishings. So is there going to be a tent or tables? And if so, what are the dimensions? How are they going to be secured? Things like that. Materials and products, we just want to make sure that there's no hazardous materials stored on site, and just understand like what it is that's going to be displayed for sale. And then lighting, heating, and sound. So some of those things that may have externalities, especially if it's like a business located close to a residential area. We would want to know like what the proposal is with regards to those things, and then are there any utility extensions that are needed to make those things work? Setbacks, so where is this proposed in relation to property lines, and like what are those property lines abutting? What are the other uses in the area? And then screening, consideration for tasteful measures to soften views of the use, such as plantings, fencing, sculptures, trellises. There's, the whole long list. I did note that we would probably want to exclude signage in here, but that might be, we might want to put a pin in that and have a more in-depth discussion. I'm not sure if everyone would agree. And then competing uses in coordination with the abutters. So we just want to make sure that there's really robust consideration given for how the area is used throughout the day and at night, and how other businesses that also need to survive or want to also add vibrancy to the area are accounted for. So permit compliance, we have a clause here that we can put in every decision that would require that if an applicant is really struggling to comply with the permit, that they need to come back to CPDC to strategize on a way to rectify whatever the situation is, and that ongoing failure to rectify the problems could result in rescission of the permit. So all these parameters and criteria for approval are things that the CPDC would look at on a case-by-case basis and may put limitations on depending on what the conversation is. And like I keep saying, what the needs of the area and the abutters are. So scrolling down, so section 5 is where we have our use table in the zoning bylaw. And there's a paragraph that kind of explains like what the different acronyms mean. And we don't have an acronym for minor site plan review yet. So I just added that in because I want to be very clear that under accessory uses, this use would always trigger a minor site plan review. So no matter what business, industrial or overlay district it's in, it's always going to trigger a minor site plan review. And then we have a section that we crossed out, and this is the open storage special permit section, which hasn't been heavily used. And instead of requiring that by special permit, we're lumping it in here with the minor site plan review process. We do think it's possible that some proposals might need a storage area for some of their equipment. And so it's kind of makes sense to kind of put them together under the minor site plan review process. So I think I've covered, yeah, there's nothing else. I think I've covered everything, and I have made some modifications since the last time the CPDC talked about this, and I noted them in the side. And that was based on feedback from some CPDC members and feedback from staff. So I should say one more thing, which is that we have an internal group of staff. Usually we're known as the development review team, but a sub cohort of us are also known as the expedited approval team. And these proposals would all be going through that whole robust staff review process before they come to CPDC. So we would have a lot of the information about what the fire department thinks, whether the health division is okay with it. You know, just like any other things, like there's always things, right? So we would do what we always do, which is get all that feedback. We usually, it's around a big table with the applicant, and or around a big Zoom with the applicant, and we hash it all out and we get it all in one place, and that turns into our, in this case, it would be a draft minor site plan decision that the CPDC has right when the hearing opens. So that's kind of like the sum total of what we're talking about here. All right.
Thank you, Julie. I guess the way I would like to proceed, right, because I know that CPDC, I know we can dive right into the minutia on the wording of some of this stuff. I'm sure, you know, some of us have notes and all that, but I think that it would probably be better to have first sort of open it up to anyone with questions from the bigger perspective, sort of the theory and the whole idea behind this before we get into the wording and the detail of any specific piece of this. So I'd like to proceed that way, and if we start going down a direction where we're starting to wordsmith or get into the details, then maybe we should push that off, and then we can go through here on those sorts of things first. I guess what I first want to say is that what I view this process is a way that something that we always try and do, right? CPDC tries to balance getting information from property owners and business owners that we need to understand what's going on, and also provide a forum for abutters or other, you know, property owners or business owners to understand and provide some comment and input that we're not going to understand, and maybe that the applicant doesn't quite understand, so that everyone gets a voice, and and usually through that discussion we end up with a better project for everyone. The thing I like about this approach with the minor site plan review, because it doesn't fall under our typical, you know, state mandated zoning limitations of what we can do. I think this provides a way that we can get information and have that discussion in a way that we could move it along more quickly and be more responsive to property owners, but still give a forum to get as much input as we can, which is essentially why we went down this path of the minor site plan for this. So with that, I guess I'll open it up first to the board, right, talking about bigger picture items on this, and then open it up to the public or the select board. So anyone from CPDC?
No, I've just got wordsmithing stuff, so.
No, and I too, I'm anxious to hear from what others have to say about it.
I like the idea of just creating the mechanism and then having the applicant pretty much come up with everything that they want to try and do, rather than us trying to figure out what people might want to do or or for their business. Let them come up with a creative idea, and then I'm sure we can figure out the mitigation for any kind of issues that might come out of that.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's open it up, Julie. Right, people use the raise hand feature if you have a comment, question.
I think I can see everyone too.
Okay.
So I can always just do this. And
Real
the old school. Have my double screen going. I see Mark has his hand raised.
Folks, thank you very much for the presentation. I have just a couple of questions to start. One is, with this minor site plan review, how frequently does it take place? Is it something that's the start of every one of your meetings? How frequently would you be meeting? So in other words, if there is an issue, does it get addressed in just a few weeks' time? Or if you can give me an idea of how those meetings go, that'd be helpful. Thanks.
Answer unless you want to, John.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So we are trying to kind of get ahead of potential demand for this. Minor site plan review isn't something that's like a regular thing that happens. It just comes up as needed, like currently, right? As we get applications. And you know, our window of like we have a whole chart of like, when is our meeting? When do we need certain applications filed by? When do we print legal ads? When do, you know, all the things. And our time frame for minor site plan review is a little bit smaller than it is for something like a definitive subdivision or a full site plan review. We going forward in the spring, we're anticipating that, you know, if we do have a number of businesses that want to use this, and we have started the outreach to try to understand like what businesses might want to have outdoor dining, and what businesses might want to, you know, do something in the spring, so that we can try to help businesses throughout the winter to like get everything queued up to get ready. We do understand that town meeting in April is like a little tricky timing for businesses that want to like really pull the trigger as soon as the weather is nice. And so with that in mind, we've scheduled more frequent meetings, and I have tentatively scheduled some meetings like in and around town meeting, like depending on whatever this is on the warrant and the vote happens, to try to like get a CPDC meeting as soon as possible, where we can have whatever applications that we have in the queue reviewed by CPDC as soon as possible after the town meeting vote. Does that answer your question, Mark?
Yeah, I think one of the questions is, EAT was put together in order to really expedite things. And if you're talking about planning for spring, April is perhaps too late. And I'm just wondering if maybe there's a way, if we were to make changes, to allow some things to take place before the changes are actually in place. And then, I don't know if the right term is grandfather them in, but to continue it for that period. I'm thinking about timing, and I'm very sensitive to it'd be great to have this planned out, you know, in the winter and think about the spring as best we can, because who knows what's going to happen with COVID. But I think what we do know is that outdoors is going to be better than indoors. And it'd be great to offer whatever opportunities we can for outdoors for all businesses.
Yeah, we did have that discussion about, you know, trying to do something, you know, the timing of all of this. And I guess we came to the position that, you know, at least because, right, we started talking about this, about outdoor dining, right? And outdoor dining in Reading in April is tough. Not impossible, right? Sometimes we have good, but, you know, we all have, I don't know if you have, well, I'll put it this way. My kids, right, they play baseball. The beginning of baseball season is horrible here. It's freezing. You don't want to be outside. But I know in my head, April is, you know, flowers and warm and all of that. It really isn't. It truly is not a nice time, except for every once in a while to be outside in Reading until the very end of April. So our hope, and what Julie was laying out, was that, you know, if we can work with businesses to get them queued up, that it might be, you know, sort of some good timing there, because to be able to get businesses approved for the end of April, and be able to get them out there when it's really some outdoor dining weather for Reading. The alternative, we looked at some different alternatives to do things that didn't require changing zoning, and it was all sort of like shoehorning things in that might work, but it was definitely stretching the bounds of what of what the rules were intended for, and not very we're looking for again. But this seems like it will work not only for April and May, but for 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the line as well. So
I think long term it's got great potential. I think that if there were a restaurant that is planning to do something this spring, they probably have to start acquiring materials now or in a few months. They certainly couldn't wait till the end of April and then start that process and expect to get things going. I mean, we kind of ran into that a little bit this year.
That's
Mr.
right.
Chairman.
Aaron wants to make a comment.
Mark, regarding that concern, I have the same concern as well. And we've put together a memo regarding another option or opportunity for the select board to potentially extend their temporary COVID outdoor dining policy so that there is an interim option while CPDC is working through this process. So that is our recommendation, staff recommendation, to have both options, that interim option, which is something that's before the select board, or will be before the select board in anticipation of that critical need right now, as CPDC is working through the zoning component for more of a long-term strategy. So we are addressing that.
Awesome.
And
Thanks.
hope that works out.
Thanks, Aaron. I think that's certainly to get things going. I think we need to have some kind of interim activity.
It's critical. It's critical that restaurants who have received licenses, and there were quite a few of them this past season, did very well and are interested in continuing to provide outdoor dining. So there are a couple of different strategies on how to be able to do that sooner rather than later.
I think great. First of all, thank you. I think that one of the things we want to think a little bit more about is how to dovetail any plans that would get made pre-April with what things would look like post-April. In other words, not go in one direction pre-April and a completely different direction post-April. And just to make sure we've thought that through a little bit structurally.
Yes, I mean, structurally, Julie and I are working on that together. So what's being proposed to you is both the CPDC and select board are working on the same similar parallel policies, if you will. Does that make sense?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, great.
thanks, Mark. Right, Carlo, so your hand up.
Hi, thanks. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Oh, hello, everyone. I share the same concerns with Mark, and thank you for answering them. And this past spring and summer, there was a lot of mandates from the state and from the governor. And we don't know what's going to happen in 2021. Hopefully, we won't need mandates, and we're going to do this on our own. But to go what Mark said, the timing is everything. And I guess a question would be, if an applicant has gone through the process with the team and the town staff, and they come to a meeting and everything is good to go except one minor thing, would that require another meeting? Because it's a minor site plan review, or can it be, all right, town staff, make sure this gets done and we're good, because 2 weeks could hurt a lot, could hurt the business a lot.
Understood, and we come across that a lot at CPDC, and we try and make a call at what is significant enough that we shouldn't allow someone, an applicant to go through, versus one that we understand what it is, but we just need this, a one piece of the application refined and understood and solidified. So when that happens, we approve the the site plan review or whatever, in this case, the minor site plan with certain conditions. We often do that with conditions that before they can go and before they're approved, they need to provide, these 3 or 4 things to town staff. That way, we don't need to reconvene. We don't need to put out a public notice. Julie knows what it is we're looking for and what can be, what we would approve. And if they submit something that's completely off base, then yeah, they would need to come back. But that very rarely happens. Usually we walk away from the meeting really understanding each other and what the plan is, and it's just a matter of getting the documentation. So completely understand that, Carlo.
No, thank you, because this spring where there was a sense of urgency for a lot of businesses that were closed, and then only way they could reopen was outdoor dining, in a sense, to accommodate the public. So thank you. That's kind of what I thought, but I think that'd be reassuring that we wouldn't have to wait. An applicant would have to wait 2 weeks just for the stamp, as long as it's minor, right?
Yeah, we try not to do that.
Right. Thank you.
Pretty good at that.
Vanessa has her hand raised as well.
Hi, thanks. First to Julie and the staff who contributed to this, thank you very much. It's a lot of detail has gone into this, and it's very much appreciated. I have just a few questions. I echo Mark and Carlo's concerns regarding timing, so thanks for that. If there are any businesses who are lined up before these changes are approved at town meeting, will then the select board be dealing with anything in March and April? Is that the assumption?
I don't think that that's the assumption until and unless we have a conversation with you about your outdoor dining policy and what might happen in the interim time period. My understanding, at least from the Cpdc perspective, is I would be working with applicants to try to get their applications queued up to come to Cpdc. So I'm trying not to assume anything else besides that.
Julie,
Okay.
add to that the vote at town meeting doesn't necessarily pass this bylaw, right? It's got to go through the state. So when it's officially approved, we can start using it. So you're going to be in those emergency COVID regulations for some time, I think.
I think I can tell you how it's typically gone, and knock on wood. So typically, so far in Reading, there's been decent success with getting zoning bylaw amendments passed at town meeting. There is a clawback to the date of first publication of the first public hearing notice, right? So technically, a technical effective date of a zoning bylaw amendment is when the legal ad prints in the paper for the public hearing for the zoning bylaw amendment, which tends to happen at least a couple months before town meeting. I think in this case where it's a minor site plan review, it's we're not talking about allowing some kind of crazy new principal use and throughout town and restricting or adding a lot of restrictions or discriminating or anything that I would worry that the Attorney General's office might come back and say we can't do that. I've actually, in my experience as a planner in Massachusetts, never seen an Attorney General actually flat out deny a bylaw or overturn a bylaw. I've seen them come back and say, we caution that this one paragraph might down the road pose legal challenges for your town if someone challenges it or questions it. So I would hope, and now of course no good deed goes unpunished, right? And it's hard to plan in a pandemic, and it's hard to plan in general, but I would say everyone would operate in good faith. We would work together. We would try to get these applications ready and in and approved and up and running, and hope the chips fall the way that our experience tells us they will.
So thank you, Julie. So just to clarify, if a business is watching now and they are planning ahead for the spring, assuming that they want to expand their outdoor space, what is the process that they would have to go through now say in February, or let's say March, they're very proactive, versus the experience in May?
So I think a lot depends on the conversation about the select board policy. And whether, and I don't know if you've read the memo, and I don't know that this is really necessarily the forum for discussing the select board policy, but like I would say in terms of what we can do here with the zoning amendment, you know, say we don't have anything in place in the interim, right? And we're just dealing with the zoning amendment, which is like still coming to town meeting in April. If an applicant's really ready to go in March, we just work with them. We make sure all their T's crossed and I's dotted, and we just wait till town meeting. And that's not exactly probably what a business is going to want to hear or have to do. But absent an interim process for dealing with these things, you know, this may be what we're talking about.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. And my last question is regarding the abutter notification. I know you touched on it. What will that, and apologies if this is detailed in the memo, I'm just seeing this now for the first time. What will that process look like? How will it be handled? I know you mentioned the 300 feet, which is great. And anyone who's affected by parking, which obviously is what we experienced over the summer. But could you provide just a little bit more detail on the notification process?
Yeah, sure. So I think like what I'm envisioning is it would be a combination of two things. So it would be our standard process that we do for pretty much every application we get, which is it's a mailing, like a physical mailing that goes to property owners directly adjacent within 300 feet of a proposed a site, right? And that's typically sent out 2 weeks with some minor site plan review. It can be less than that, you know, 2 weeks prior to a scheduled CPDC meeting. And then there's also a notification in the paper. But so there's that piece, right? And then there's the other piece, which is, you know, reaching out to all the businesses and tenants within a, like I stated here, a reasonably related geographic area. So we have put together a huge list of all the businesses in town and broken them into geographic blocks. And so we refer to that internally. And also I think you've probably seen this term before as block plan, right? So we do a block plan review where we figure out like which blocks of abutting businesses need to be notified because they're stakeholders in this area. And so we would do an email, maybe we would go door to door with a flyer. We would, depending on how much time we have, like how much we know about an application, you know, we could do as much or as little outreach, but you know, it would be a minimum of that 300-foot abutter mailing, and then also an email or some kind of door-to-door notification to those other abutters within the reasonably related geographic areas, the other businesses and tenants on the premises and in the vicinity.
That's great. Thank you very much. And thank you for taking this initiative. It's really appreciated.
Thanks, Vanessa. Other comments?
Karen also has her hand raised.
Go ahead, Karen.
Karen as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am really excited that I'm appreciative of staff getting this together so far ahead of the spring dining season, if you will. I think this is an opportunity that is going to extend long beyond, you know, getting through this pandemic in terms of revitalizing our downtown and making sure that we're down there and utilizing it. And when you're down there enjoying a cup of coffee, remember what other businesses are down there, and you're going to spend more time and spend more money. So the question, I just wanted to make sure, so some of these businesses that have the outdoor dining, definitely the extended length of season seems to be something that we definitely can do better on, because I'm still driving through towns like Andover. And certainly less people are dining out now, but a number of restaurants still have their little parklets or whatever they're called set up. And when in New England we get those rare crazy days, people will sit outside. So I like the idea of allowing flexibility as long as it's safe. And then, so here, I know some of these businesses will need alcohol licenses to go along with the extended season, and some will not, coffee shops and things. So I'm not sure how that fits together. But I am very much in support of, I appreciate this, and I would be in support of the select board, revisiting our policies as an interim solution as well, and just doing everything we can to make this more successful for 2021. And a question, just a little bit to the side, item 4632, 4623, item C. So sometimes we have a business that is so wildly successful that they start creating traffic problems, repeated calls to the police, all of the things you mentioned in this paragraph. How does a minor site plan get triggered for a restaurant like that? Is that covered in another area of the zoning bylaw, or does that also fall under this particular area?
Yeah, so well, there's a couple ways that can happen, Karen. That's a really good question. So basically, if it's say it's a restaurant with a site plan decision, and whatever's happening is like in direct and obvious violation of a provision of the site plan decision, we could take zoning enforcement. Another way that we can do it is through this minor site plan process, but you will note that the first step in this is for a business or a restaurant or an applicant to propose something to the town for their site first. And then we say, okay, is this a site where there's C, this letter C right here? Is this an existing site that's become a nuisance? And so really they could propose anything. They could propose to reside their building, and we'd say, oh, you are a site with, routine traffic spillover, excessive noise, you're violating all these things, and we've never been able to capture you and bring you back for a review any other way, and now we can because you're proposing to change anything on your site. So that's
okay. No, thank you for that clarification. Is that a change from the current zoning bylaws, or has this been in place?
This letter C has been in place since 2016.
And I think we have used it, or at least we've used the I'm going to say the thread of it on different
Okay.
different business owners.
Thank you.
Put it that way. But right, it's there. They know that this is a requirement, because Julie points it out. So it brings them. It's a way to bring them into the table and try and solve the problems. So
okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Other sort of overarching comments. I see Mark.
Mark and Vanessa both have their hand raised.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. One clarification, one question, just to come full circle on the question of restaurants that are looking to get some arrangement for the coming spring. The select board does have the ability to make that happen. I mean, we could, with current policies or modifications, we could make that happen. I was not sure where we left the last piece on Vanessa's question, that there would be an issue, and her question was, hey, how does someone apply and can it happen? I just want to make sure that the answer is yes, they can apply, and yes, it can happen.
You can say that, right? And I think, right, because that's a select board issue. The select board, I think, needs to take some action to be able to make that happen. I'm not sure that the CPDC meeting, although I would love to talk about it, I'm not sure that the CPDC meeting is the right place to sort of hash out those. But my understanding, Mark, is maybe that was more of a statement that you do plan on taking that up and figuring out a way to make that happen.
Yeah, I didn't want to leave it that businesses heard us saying, geez, we're not going to be able to do it for the spring. That's okay, great. And then the second is a question. So this policy is focused on businesses coming forward and making a request. How would this work if staff came forward and said, hey, we want to coordinate a bunch of things to take place on the town common or along the sidewalk in a particular area? Would it go through the same process? How would that take place?
I'll just I just realized I have a pin in me. I don't know why. So in my Zoom, I should say, not in me.
Kind of like voodoo dolls, but anyway.
I was like, where'd that come from? I think that, you know, the two things you just mentioned, like the town common and the public sidewalk, you know, those are under select board jurisdiction. And town common may also be under historical commission jurisdiction, or historic district commission jurisdiction. So those are processes we'd have to work through, you know, however they play out with you, with the select board. You know, typically staff aren't proposing things on private land, and so the zoning amendment is really for private land. So I can think about that further.
I guess I'll put it out there, Mark, is that, right, this is to address private land. But I could envision with select board action that Cpdc could handle that same sort of thing, maybe with the town being the applicant and the Cpdc being the forum to address these same sorts of issues on a publicly owned land. And maybe I've just thrown it out there, like maybe Erin would be the one that coordinates sort of what the businesses would be looking for, and be the, I'm going to say, the applicant, but we would use the same sort of forum to sort of sort of get at all the issues. And I think there's a way that to get there, if that's what we want to do, we collectively as a town.
Great, thank you.
Other overarching.
Vanessa has her hand
I'm
raised.
sorry, yeah, Vanessa.
Great, thank you. Building off of what Mark said in my previous comment on notifications, Julie, can you clarify whether both owners and tenants will be notified?
Yeah, I mean, we absolutely have to notify both owners and tenants. So owners is, you know, the typical thing, and then with this use, we would definitely notify tenants.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much.
Others before we, Nick?
Let's let Lisa go.
No.
Hi, I'm Lisa Egan. I'm the director of the Chamber of Commerce in Reading, and I just wanted to echo everyone's statements on how I think this is very business friendly and a great approach to help lengthen the dining season, in addition to supporting our businesses, not only through the pandemic, but just offer more flexibility to have events and pop-up things and gatherings once they're safe to do so on the common and within the downtown. So thank you so much for all the hard work that's gone into it so far. It's appreciated.
Thank you. It's good to hear that. One thing I did want to mention, well, both of you said it, Lisa and Karen mentioned it. The reason why I like this approach with the minor site plan is that, you know, this is not just a COVID thing. I envision that this will, you know, provide a way for whether it's outdoor dining or outdoor uses or those sorts of things to have a path forward. You know, as I was reading this, you know, the truth is sometimes we don't necessarily, as town government, pay attention to some things that we know should happen and that it's okay, but we don't necessarily, you know, want to get in the weeds of that. Christmas tree sales. I can think of a number of them that happen every year around town. We have no way to really permit that. Those are not happening. Sort of, and I'm going to say that's not a sanctioned use of those properties. And so with this, you know, there is a way. Not that we need to really control, you know, Christmas tree sales, but things like that. I know that we've struggled with in the past of how do we let some of those temporary uses happen and not create a safety hazard. And I think this will do that, in addition to, you know, getting some, allowing people to do outdoor dining and those sorts of things. So.
Agreed. Sounds great.
All right. I guess if we can now dig into some of the details. I know that at least Cpdc has some wordsmithing, but shall we start at the top?
Good places to start as any. So here there was a question from Nick regarding like specifically what is meant by programming and storage, and are we talking about a potential intensification of a use? So is it more clothing racks outside, or is it just moving the ones that are inside to the outside? And I wanted to say thank you to people who joined us in the So Nick, please clarify if I'm not exactly answering your, or if I'm not asking.
Yeah, I guess I was trying to make an example here. So you can understand the impact of a restaurant, for example, doubling the number of tables they want, right? If you remember a few years back, Venetian was going to try and put something up on their roof. And their plan was basically to take the table count from downstairs and move it to this outdoor space. They weren't going to double their count. So there isn't really any parking impact to that. There's some noise potentially, but so that's understandable. The storage uses are different, or the other uses are different in that there's really probably not much more traffic or parking requirements if somebody puts something for sale outside, right? So that's all. I was just trying to make sure that we could accommodate whatever it was they were coming to. And that's why, as I kept reading through it, I was thinking, we just keep this as general as possible. We make them provide how they want to address the impact. And then we look at that, and as a group, you know, and with the input of the abutters, we could probably come up with a solution that works for everybody. So yeah, it was about understanding the intensity, the impact to the intensity of the use.
That's a good thought, right? That we're not looking necessarily to have increased intensity of use.
I guess I'm wondering, is that something that we should be sure is included then in the criteria that we're reviewing for? Is this moving indoor activity outdoors, or is it increasing the use? Should we add that intensity of use to the criteria? Without specifying, just saying, hey, this is something we should be sure to ask about.
At the criteria where we start to judge it down below, where it says that we're looking for input, noise, right, traffic, parking,
all that, yeah.
I think we talk about all that in here. So right in there, I think is where we should say it.
Sorry, Nick, where do you want to add it?
Yeah, right there in the criteria for approval, right? They're gonna run through A, B, C all the way through I, J, whatever it is. They're gonna have to show us how they accommodate all these. What are the hours of use? You know, how are they gonna deal with circulation? What happens to parking if that's an issue? Maybe they don't have an issue with parking. Health and safety, certainly if they're providing outdoor food, you know, it's gonna come into play. Or as Karen mentioned, if they have an alcohol license, they'll have to show us how they're going to provide for that, and all the way down here. So I think this is where we say it.
Yeah, I'm just going to screen share the Word version and edit it as we talk. Can you all see the Word version now?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, so I'll just add it in there.
Right. It's something about substantially increasing the intensity of use, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Which to me, the way I think about that, Julie, is when we look at uses that are not permitted. I mean, not what's the term I'm looking for?
Non-conforming.
Non-conforming use, right? There's a difference between right. You can expand the footprint, but not the that doesn't mean you're expanding the use, even if you expand the footprint.
Right.
Sort of the same thing here, right? You know, if you put another rack of clothes outside, are you really expanding your business? Yeah, you're moving it outside, but not more people are going to come, right? So I think those are the sorts of things we need to think through.
I'm just gonna put in like a placeholder and then do some
Sure.
thing after the meeting.
Sure.
I'm just gonna make a note myself, go back to that. Okay.
Back up to the top, I think that in the definition, we don't need the clause at the end, subject to limitations imposed by CPDC as part of minor site plan review.
Okay.
And that gets in other places because, right, you also have this same use that will be allowed under regular site plan review.
Right, like if it's proposed.
As part of, yeah.
Yep, you're right. Yep. Okay.
Or do you want to just highlight that and think about it more?
Yeah, it's probably a good idea. And then I was actually going to ask about whether we should take out the word extension here. But that might have other implications if we didn't include it. Because we say relocation or extension of indoor commerce, outdoor area.
Kind of like keeping it. Yeah.
Yeah,
because it adds flexibility to what the person's doing.
Relocation might sort of force us into you can, right, you can't have those bistro tables because you're not pulling them from inside, right?
Okay. Yeah, and I mean, I guess it could be extension, but without intensification in like a really negative way, and that would be something we could talk about with applicants.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Anyone else comment on the first section? No.
I've got a question relative to, hang on. The use of the word programming, do we want to replace that with event?
I think event evokes something a little bit more like ephemeral than what I was envisioning.
Okay.
But I don't know, I don't want to speak for the rest of CPDC on that.
Yeah, I think I was the one who suggested programming before as a general word that could mean like fitness classes outside and then just kind of making stuff up, but things like art classes outside, so things that aren't just a one-time event or even a series of like monthly events, but actual the programming that a business might do, might want to take it outside.
Okay, so something like an open mic for Irish singers and dancers would be under programming.
I guess it would, yes.
Okay.
In the way that I think of it.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah, I think programming is kind of a good catch-all for a lot of things. So like nice kind of flexible word.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, the next one, section on applicability.
I think it was Nick who suggested adding this in here. Seemed like a good suggestion. Like because with these applications, we specifically won't have construction probably, and maybe not really like site alteration, like,
yeah,
you know. Okay.
This section here, right, on minor site plan procedures. Any comments? My question was, Julie, the word reasonably related is,
Lawyer won't like it.
yeah,
That was exactly my questions, if that's specific enough to
Right,
hold
we
up.
know
So somebody's judging what reasonable is. Do we need to say geographic block or something like that?
yeah. I mean, we know that Julie Mercier we know her definition of reasonably related, but other people may not, and, and the next person coming along may have a different definition of reasonably related.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, I was thinking about that when I wrote it. I'm trying to be generally in some ways, because like one proposal may have like a lot of businesses in a big area that use that site, or a lot of stakeholders, whereas another one might not have as many. So it's like, yeah. And I don't want to pin it down necessarily to say a certain radius, because that so easily go wrong with that.
Well, could you say, I mean, as a minimum, right? Can't you say something as a minimum, not to say that you wouldn't provide and require more or request more?
Yeah, definitely.
I think that's.
So then can we just use a 300-foot radius as a minimum, the 300-foot radius, right?
Yeah.
Just for that. But then you could look at it and understand that if somebody was proposing to make use of parking, that was 299 feet away, that the businesses around that parking impact maybe should be included.
What about something like minimally within a 300-foot radius, and other businesses or tenants impacted by changes in common use sites? That's not exactly the right word, but we're talking about the business that, what's related, how are they related? They're dependent on similar outdoor areas, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure I helped much, but that's kind of the I feel like I want some bounds around. If somebody comes back and says, well, you didn't notify me and I'm related, how did you judge what's reasonably related? We want to have it have enough definition that the person after Julie can say, yeah, this is what this means.
Yeah, no, you guys are right. It's always going to be like, who chose this group of stakeholders, right? Like, that's why having it be defined like a 300-foot radius is really nice.
How about we just ask
really big sites, like,
highlighted, and maybe ask town council what they think a better word would be.
Yeah, I'll give it some more thought. I don't want to.
There isn't a lawyer on right now. You can't swing a dead cat without hitting the lawyer. There's no lawyer.
The lawyers are going to have their field day with this probably in mid-January. So, but I'll give that some thought. And yeah, it's tricky. Okay, and then I added in this minor modification like reminder. We have a process in the bylaw already, and actually it's a judgment call by staff usually. And a lot of times, as Nick and John are familiar with, like, staff email the chair and just ask for an opinion just to make sure we're not doing anything without permission that you wouldn't agree with. So, if it's a hard one to call, like, we would defer to Cpdc to help us make the decision whether they think something needs to come back or not.
Just as a way to make the zoning bylaw as readable as possible, I think we typically want to put the title after the section. Right, section, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You're right.
So whatever the title of that 4692 is.
Yep. And then there's a couple questions here. Let me expand them for you so you can see them. Okay. So it was Nick, I think, who had a comment about maybe that seasonality might not be the right word to use here. You could say like seasonal nature, maybe.
Before we skipped over the zoning, I mean the loading zone and parking. Did anyone have any comments on?
Oh, I'm sorry. It didn't change since last time, so I.
Yeah, I'm just.
Yeah. No, you're right.
No comments. All right. I just want to make sure.
My only concern about the waiver of parking is that this isn't just for the outdoor, this is for all minor site plan, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So we've just said that you don't have to meet parking regulations.
We had it in there before, Tony.
Okay.
The section here that's totally crossed out for loading, and then this section here for parking, it was only restricted to business districts, which I crossed out. I mean, it's all discretionary, like waivers are discretionary, so you can make that call based on whatever the proposal is.
Okay.
So, but going back to that, there was, it seems silly, I think, the way that you read it. I mean, when you look at it now, that there are these two things that are almost exactly the same, but they are different, and there was a rationale for them to be different, in that that we didn't. We weren't looking to allow any future board to waive parking in non-business districts for some reason. I'm not sure what the rationale there is, but right, there was a rationale. So I guess what I'm suggesting is not right this second, but let's think about that there is a reason why we blanket said, okay, you can waive the loading zone, but that we had a reason for only allowing the waiver of parking, loading, and related requirements in the business district.
I'm just thinking about this, and we probably shouldn't. I feel like I probably shouldn't think about this just impromptu like this. But would the reason for restricting it to business districts before be because there's more street parking generally in business districts as opposed to parking that's just has to be accommodated on the site? And I guess then I'm also thinking, a waiver is a waiver, so the Cpdc can choose to give a waiver or not, depending on whether or not there's adequate parking off-site. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand where you're going, John. Certainly, if it's written in one paragraph, you could waive loading and not parking, or parking and not loading, right? If that was appropriate. That's not your concern there, right? You're just thinking we should never waive parking?
No. I'm just thinking, and honestly, I can't wrap my head around it right now. I'm saying, let's put a pin in this. There was a reason why we, and Nick, you and I were probably on the board at the time, why we decided, what was the rationale for allowing loading zone spaces requirements to be waived anywhere, and this other just in business districts. And right, let's not just assume that it was some quirky thing that just happened. I think there was actually a rationale, a reason behind it. So that's all I'm saying. Because I can't think of what that rationale is right now. But I don't want us to just pass by it and say, oh yeah, these two things should be combined. Because I think we've done that in other cases. And I'm going to point out, like, the whole idea of eliminating the categories in our table of uses. It seemed like a good idea at the time, but it does have repercussions. And this is just one of those things. I'm just asking us to be a little bit cautious about this and think through what those repercussions may be.
Well, and just to note, this is also like specifically related to minor site plan review.
Yep.
So, you know.
Yeah, we had some reason for doing it before. That's really all I'm saying is, you know, and let's try and see if we can, you know, some, not tonight, I'm not suggesting that tonight, but, you know, think about it.
All right, we move down to criteria.
Yep.
So seasonality.
Seasonality is the word.
I don't have a problem with seasonality.
Nick is saying availability.
No, I think it's a question that I had to you.
Oh, okay.
I just need to expand it.
Well, seasonality was just my first reaction to the word, but I mean, by definition, it's correct.
So moving on to the parking question Nick had here, like we don't say whether it's on-site or off-site or just parking in general, and I wanted it that way on purpose. You know, a lot depends on the application, the location, and whether there's private and or public parking nearby. So I think what I'm trying to get at here is that whatever is being proposed isn't having like a serious negative impact on the ability for a nearby business to function.
No, I'm saying the syntax of that reads like parking on the site.
Yeah, I had a similar question. And if I may, I'm not sure my syntax of what the note that I took is much better, but what about something like parking for uses? No, availability of parking for uses that are served by the existing parking. That's not right either, but that, I was also getting at that. It seems like what we would care about is the availability of parking for multiple uses if they're dependent on that parking.
I would just delete on the site.
Yeah, okay.
Does this look good?
No, I would delete.
No, it's the on-site that gets confusing. I think that might box us in.
Availability of parking to serve the use, right? That's what you're trying to say. You said yourself, you don't care whether it's on-site or somewhere else, if they have a plan.
Yeah, okay.
Serving the use, it doesn't matter whether it's on-site. So I would just
okay.
Like availability of parking to serve other uses.
I would say the proposed use.
So I was talking about like.
It's got to be both.
It's both, I think.
To serve all uses.
Yeah.
It's to serve that use and the other uses that are that use. I don't know.
What about just? I mean, the top language. You will consider and may impose limitations or conditions related to the following criteria. C. Parking, availability of parking. Period.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you're going to look at. Whether it's on-site, off-site, taking that person's use or not, you're going to look at the potential limitations or not about parking. Period.
And really, what you're looking at is it's the impact, it's the availability and impact. Well, it's because it's the availability of parking, but it's also the impact of the lost parking.
Right.
If we're talking about losing parking. Yes,
I think
it's all related to availability.
I think the top language gives you the ability, like that's what you're doing. We're considering and may impose limitations and or conditions related to. And so because each one of these are going to be different, I think it's just availability of parking.
Yeah.
Do we need to be specific for the availability of parking to reference other businesses in the area to make sure that they are covered as well?
But that's what I'm saying. Like, this is a discussion. It's going to be different each time. So yes, that's going to happen. Or when you're taking up
Change it.
spots of your own, or when
Change
you're
it to
taking, yeah,
availability and impact. Availability of and impact to parking.
correct. Yes, great. That's good.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So then Andrew had some good ideas about adding in some additional criteria related to lighting, heating, sound, and setbacks. So I put them in here. And Andrew, please chime in if I didn't get your intent exactly right.
I think the only other note I had was that the setbacks in table 6.3, the dimensional control setbacks are given for principal uses, but not accessory uses. So there's no clear defined setbacks, and I didn't know if we wanted to impose any, or I think this language, works, but is there a certain number that we should strive to reach?
I like that it's, again, general, right? So it says proximity to the property line. When they come with their proposal, if they're putting up a trellis or something to put the screen and they want it right on the property line, that's not really an offensive use to the people on the other side necessarily. If they put their speakers on the property line, that's a different thing, right?
Agreed.
Can we go back to D, health and safety? And maybe it gets back to Rachel's point of what this consider may impose limitations or conditions related to the following criteria. I don't want to approve something that they're complying with all health codes and life safety codes. We don't do that. That's not right. Like, that's not what we
They just have to do that.
But well, what I'm saying is like what if the fire department says, have the CPDC add this condition in their decision that like something needs to happen. Like we do now, we gather all feedback from staff and we get feedback from the fire department, the police department, and we incorporate it into your decisions.
maybe take the word codes out and put concerns.
Okay.
Or I don't know, that's my knee-jerk reaction, right? I just don't want to, I don't want to do anything where CPDC is sort of inferring that they meet health codes.
Why can't we tell them that they have to meet with that? We sort of imply that when they come to us with a new building, right, they're
right
going to have to comply with life safety and building codes. If they're doing a restaurant, they're going to comply with the Board of Health codes.
Yeah, but this is different. They're coming to us, right?
Right, but when
we review something,
they come to us with a conservation issue. We say, well, you have to comply with conservation. We don't tell them what those are, but they come to us with their decision from their meeting with conservation.
But it's not in our code that they have to meet conservation. It's in conservation's code.
Right.
It's in almost all of our site plan decisions.
And that's fine, because in the decision, it's not in the code that they need to meet. Technically speaking, if you're going to have an outdoor restaurant, you're also going to have to go to the health department and get the site certified and, you know, make sure there's sufficient water and everything else. And that's nothing we can control.
I think we need to tell them they need to do that, though.
I agree with that, Nick.
Yeah, so this could be something that's in our like application and in the requirements that way, but not in zoning. I totally agree with you guys.
And to your point, you know, if you know, the fire department says, they need to do this or that, we're going to tell them they need to do, you need to do this because of fire concerns. But I guess, yeah, I'm wary of the word compliance with codes, someone else's codes. Nick may be more comfortable with that, but I'm not, as this board, doing that. So.
Okay.
And I only say that because I know Nick deals with codes all the time. Other items. I'll say under screening, I think we need to take the word tasteful out.
Like, who's determining that?
Yeah.
Do we want to also change soften, which seems very subjective as well? Measures to
screen.
Yeah, just screen.
We want to be careful though about that because some of these need visibility.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes you can screen. Sometimes you could, treat it with something that helps to enliven the side, that helps to enliven the front as well. So I think we want to be careful. I want to avoid implying that they should just be blocking it entirely.
Yeah, I think you're right. What if we say measures to address views? Because that way it could be potentially to frame the view if it's something that we really want to see. Almost like we were just talking about with the Sanborn Street property.
Yeah.
And in some cases though, like screening might be like if it's like glaring lighting.
Yeah.
Right. So you're going to address the issue. If it's a sound or a lighting issue, or maybe they have maybe they have to stack the operation back in some corner, right? They have to have their serving tables or something in the back there. So maybe that part does get screened, but the open tables don't.
Or I'll go back to that. What was the name of that business? Camp to Cottage. Castle, right? They have outdoor storage that's in view of residential buildings across the street. I don't think that anyone would be looking to screen those, that furniture that happens to be outside. So yeah,
It's to address the impact of the use.
Isn't it? Are we talking about appearance? I'm thinking about appearance, transition from the public to private use. I don't know. Screening may work, I suppose, but I'm thinking more about what it looks like, right? It's about what the appearance is.
But that's why we're telling them to come up with the idea. So screening is a pretty generic term.
Yeah.
And then it's just they're going to address the impact of it. If it's something that's really attractive, we somehow show it off. And if it's something that needs to be closed off or protected, then they can do that.
Yeah.
No, measures to address the impact of.
But what if there's like two things. There's like kind of like drawing attention to something and promoting it, and then there's like screening it to protect residential abutters. There's like two things kind of.
Impact isn't necessarily always negative.
It's kind of pejorative.
Kind of true.
What if you use a fun font?
Excuse me, John, can I interrupt just for a second? I apologize for interrupting the flow here. I'm wondering if I can ask for a motion from the select board to adjourn. Carlo, are you on still?
Yes.
Can I ask you to make that motion, please?
Motion to adjourn the select board meeting.
Second.
Thank you. We have to do a quick roll here. So, Carlo?
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
and Mark, yes. Thank you. We are adjourned. Thanks, John. Thanks, folks. Appreciate it very much.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
So where were we? Address the impact of some different word, or
Maybe this is okay.
yeah, let's leave that the way it is and think if there's, see if anyone has anything better next time around.
I'm just gonna put a,
Yeah.
just highlight it and think about it. Should we leave the abutting residential areas in here?
I think so.
Because we don't think they need
Yeah, I
to.
was gonna say, why don't just a butters?
Issues?
Yeah, I mean,
Right, yeah.
I think anybody has the right to want some tasteful screening.
Do you need that last and?
You tell me, Tony.
I think not, but
Oops, I didn't mean that.
Zoning grammar. I don't know.
Council take it out.
How about the last word of J? Shouldn't that be land uses? Or maybe needs of abutters? Use that same term?
Yeah, to be consistent, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then maybe too narrow. Technically.
We tend to think of abutters like in that statutory sense, which isn't exactly.
Yeah.
Is a butter just the people who are right next door?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. We talked about this with the design guidelines, remember? Are we talking about directly adjacent abutters? Are we talking about statutory abutters? Are we talking about, it's a tricky word to use in the zoning bylaw, I think.
Can you say needs of impacted uses? That broadens it out an awful lot, I know.
Just say like neighboring uses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uses like, I think that might be a better way to say it.
And how about for the title, competing uses and could you say neighborhood coordination?
Sounds great.
Other comments?
not there. Under permit compliance, may be required, shouldn't be, shall be required.
What do you guys think?
Oh, can't they go administratively? Can't this be done administratively
I mean,
sometime?
I think it just depends on like what the nature of the non-compliance is, right? And if we can address it. I mean, we would try to address as much as we could, like without having to bring them back to CPDC.
In that case, I did go with May.
You know, we're not trying to be like super onerous, and we're trying to work with people as much as possible. So.
And then is to strategize on potential solutions, is that too weak? Instead of to identify solutions?
Sure.
Other comments on this section? No, moving along.
Okay. Wait, you know what? I was just thinking, do we want to talk a little bit more about this signage? Like, do you all agree that we should be excluding signage here?
The question is the signage visible, let's call it internally versus externally, and exactly what type of signage it is. If they're putting up basically one of those printed plastic banners to say this is the restaurant name, I'm not that adverse to it. I mean, so long as it's not, 100 feet long and 25 feet tall. But by the same token, I don't want it to be lit up and highlighted. It should be, you're coming to the restaurant, you know it's there. You're going to see something going on. Signage is always tricky. And hopefully I muddied the waters enough on that one.
No, I was thinking that we wouldn't include signage in the screening elements. I'm not opposed to signage on like table umbrellas and things like that. I don't even think we allow that now, but I think that would be okay in the future. I think that's okay. It's kind of a nice look. But if we don't take it out here, we can't control the words. Remember, Supreme Court told us we can't read the sign.
Right.
So we have no control over it. That's why I say you exclude it, and they get their signage like they normally do. This extension of the outdoor use, what kind of signage would they need? Their building is still there. Their main use is still there. It has signage. Maybe you have a small directional sign that says, wait to be seated or something.
Yeah, am I interpreting this correctly, that this basically means that signage can't be used as part of your screening element? Is that what this is saying?
That's what my intent was, right?
I like that.
I do too.
I just think it might need to be clearer.
Do we want to have a section for signage? Because if Nick, if you said that like currently under section 8, the sign bylaw, we wouldn't allow an umbrella that had a business logo on it or something, we might want to be clear in here whether we agree with that or not.
Well, this is within the parentheses of examples of screening, and so I thought it was very explicit what this was excluding.
I mean, within
have a separate section for
criteria, like have a separate letter, like letter would be K, but I would put it in here somewhere.
Yeah, I think so.
About signage.
I think you could have something in signage that either refers it back to the main signage sections and talks about what relief there might be for some special signage.
I mean, and I hate to refer people to the sign bylaw.
And I think that's part of the problem is that, right, that any sort of temporary signage is difficult at best.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe
What if we just say something like justification for temporary signage? So if the use is around the back, right? Building has a big open lot in the back, and so they want to have this outdoor seating. They may need some signage to direct people back there or to tell them what's back there. That's okay.
Generally speaking, the direction, so I feel like you guys are pretty flexible. And the sign bylaw is pretty flexible.
On directional signage?
Could we approve under this signage that doesn't necessarily comply with the zoning, the signage component of the zoning bylaw? If it's linked to this type of use?
I question the same. I think A-frames would be like a great sign for any type of events and uses.
Yeah, it's true.
Can you say something like temporary signage? You know, just
Well, that's why we just say, justification for temporary signage. That temporary signage can be proposed as anything. They could come back and propose a big wall-mounted sign, right?
right.
We might say no. They can come back and propose a freestanding sign, or they could do these A-frames or a banner or something.
I'd say like any desired.
Yeah, it has to be about this expansion, this program expansion. That's what all of this criteria is for.
Right.
This is not for their regular site plan review.
Right.
And I'll go back to my comment earlier, is this section, since I can't see the top, specifically for the outdoor, or is it part of, okay. I just want to make sure it wasn't part of the minor site plan review. This is specific for outdoor commerce, dining, programming, or storage.
Right. Aaron had a comment that we could change screening to visual impact. Does that sound a little bit more palatable? What do you guys think if we just said?
The reason why I suggested that is because I'm hearing that the CPDC is not only wanting to maybe shield the things, but maybe opening up visual opportunities. So visual impact gives you both opportunities there in the language. Just something to consider.
And then maybe if you change impact to effect.
Yeah.
You also,
it's E or A.
The noun, right?
It's E.
A.
Right.
E is the
No,
noun.
affect is the verb.
That's right.
I also have artwork here that's listed, but architectural lighting is sometimes used as artwork. So you may want to think about playing with that a little bit more, integrating lighting into your visual impact statement instead.
Lighting is potential impact beyond the edges of the property. Right?
Okay.
Just there.
That makes sense.
Utilities as well with regards to lighting.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if someone was doing something that was artwork and lighting, it would be part of their proposal and it could be discussed.
Awesome. Great.
Going back to lighting, heating, sound, you shouldn't, let's try it again. You can eliminate the sound generating devices, just leave sound. I believe the town bylaw prohibits sound generating devices, period, outdoors.
Which town bylaw?
The one that specifically that says you may not have sound devices. External
Why can't we leave this here? Why can't we leave this here nice and neat? It's all right here. We don't have to go find some other bylaw.
Yeah.
You can leave it. It's not a problem, but I would assume the town bylaw takes precedence.
Well, we can use it as our basis for the criteria that we hold them to.
Right.
Right here, we're just telling them that a sound generating device is an impact we're going to need to mitigate.
Can you send me that, Tony?
Yeah, I'll look it up and send it to you.
I just want to see what it applies to. I don't want to change this.
You're saying it's a general bylaw?
Yes.
Oh. .8.
I was thinking more about discussing that offline if we want to keep going with this tonight and look into what Tony's talking about tomorrow. Should I keep going?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think in this section, I think proposed needs to be changed to approved.
Right here.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's better.
And then the one other thing I had on this page is, I didn't really think through this too much, but are there outdoor commerce, dining, program, or storage uses that may be permissible through a minor site plan review in residential districts or something? Yeah, right, because that's our other table.
I'm not sure if I was just being consistent with where we have open storage, but that's a good question, John. Let me see.
I mean, I'm not pushing it. I'm purely asking the question.
No, that's a good question. We do have businesses in residential districts. So let me think about that. I'd have to look into this a little bit more about what we want to do about it.
And it may not be appropriate in those, but right, we do have some businesses in residential districts that may, you know, should they benefit from the same flexibility?
Yeah, maybe.
Depends.
Maybe we have some businesses along Woburn Street, right behind the downtown smart growth district. I can think of a handful of businesses in residential areas that maybe.
I would tend, you know, if someone were to propose something in a residential district, I think I don't want to say the rigor, but right, there'd be less we would view them differently, certainly, right? Because the impact would be likely more on those residential, on those neighboring uses. But perhaps we should open up as well.
No, it's great. It's great feedback, all of it. This is what we do. We just talk about it over and over and over again, and then work out all the kinks. So. All right. Is there any other comments?
Other thoughts, comments?
There's someone chatting me. Let me check. Oh.
All right. So where do we go from here, Julie? We have a public meeting, a public hearing on this on January 11th, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Do we have a, right, there's a couple of pieces in here that are still, right, you're going to wordsmith a little bit and investigate.
Right. We can
would we anticipate bringing this up before that January 11th or again, or maybe not?
We could talk about it on December 14th. That's your next regularly scheduled meeting, and the agenda isn't as well. We're still working out some things. We're still moving around, so there might be a chance to have a little time on the agenda for this. In any case, I'll put it on the agenda if there's time. I'll put it under other business, and then if there's time at the end of the night, or if there's a break or whatever, and you want to talk about it.
I would anticipate if we did bring it up, it would just be focusing in on those couple of items that we left open tonight, and not a whole rehash. And then on January 11th, presenting and having the public hearing on the whole thing.
Right. Yep. And also I'll circulate it to you guys after I work on it. I'll circulate it via email, and you can let me know if you have comments like in the meantime, in the lead up to the December meeting, and then we'll talk about it in December if we have time, and then if not, January 11th.
Okay. Great. What's next on our agenda?
Minutes, I think.
Oh.
And I'm gonna let Andrew screen share those. Stop mine, since he's the master.
So we'll only have the 10:19 minutes tonight. I believe the 11:02 were on the agenda, but they're not ready yet for your review unless I want to get torn apart, which I don't. So. If you can all see those.
One at a time.
So these are the 10:19 meeting minutes. If anyone's reviewed prior and has comments, just shout them out, but we can slowly work through it as well.
I just say that October 19th feels like 3 eons ago.
Seriously.
Doesn't it?
I was like, I don't remember this conversation at all. actually, I wonder, the back and forth section of the questions and then John's answers. I just feel like it needs bullets.
Okay.
The question, the answer, the question, the answer. I don't know if this is important to be clear on posterity, but I think it was a really informative section where we were very clear about all of the different opportunities of public input.
Sorry, where is that in here? What page?
End of page. It's not telling me what page. How do you find out what pages it is on? Hang on.
This section here.
1 second. End of page 3.
Yeah.
This is like kind of getting at something I've been wondering about for a while, which I'll just pose to you. So we tend to do pretty transcripty minutes just because I think it's really easy to just type what you hear or write what you hear. And then like it can be useful for us when we go back to look at things later, like how the conversation actually went and what the thought process was. But transcripty minutes are definitely not required and are not what many boards and commissions do. And so I guess we never really asked like if you like them this way or not. We've just kind of always done them this way since I've been around, at least. I welcome your input.
Personally, I think it's nice and readable. I always feel bad for the person who's writing it who has to come up with different words for said over and over again.
Nick gave me that comment before.
If you did it like screenplay style, you wouldn't have to do that.
I've never used the word opined so much in my life,
Exactly.
except when I'm writing minutes. Well, I can take another look at these and bullet some of that if it's preferred, and maybe some other areas, especially even on the zoning discussion as well.
I don't think it's critical. It just seemed, the back and forth in there has a lot of information. It doesn't.
No, it's a good thought because Kim Saunders used to bullet some good details on plans and summaries, so I can go back and do that.
I wouldn't not approve them before you did that type of thing. So.
Andrew, at the top of page 3, second paragraph.
Yep.
You actually have a comment does not show up in the notes.
Sorry, can you explain?
You have a comment where you're asking the percentage of what? I'm looking at it in the Word doc that you submitted in the packet. So there's a little balloon to the right at the end of that paragraph.
I don't see it in this one. I thought I was looking at what
Right
was...
there, the third paragraph down.
Third paragraph, okay.
It looks like you added the words of lot area, because that wasn't there before. That was my comment of what.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Other than that, I have no other comments.
leave it to you guys if you would want to approve them or if you want me to go back and bullet some of this. So
I would say we approve it. So I'm going to recommend we approve it.
I'll second.
okay.
All right, I have a second. Any other discussion?
No.
No. All those in favor, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. 5-0.
Right. I don't think there's anything else on the agenda, but did you have any updates you wanted to give, Julie?
Not really, actually. I mean, we're doing, as you know, working on outdoor dining, working on the open space plan update. There'll be a lot of, probably a lot of public meetings coming up in January related to a number of things we're working on, Walker's Book Drive, downtown parking. None of them are specifically scheduled yet. So stay tuned for, early 2021.
Okay, thank you. There are a couple of notes I have from the town meeting where we had 2 instructional motions. The first was to look at the lot coverage in the downtown smart growth district. The second was, I forget what it was.
Short-term rentals.
Short-term rentals, thank you. I did let the town meeting know that April, which is what the original request for the lot coverage was probably undoable. And they said they recognized it. They didn't change the motion, but they did recognize that we probably wouldn't have anything available or done until November.
At least. Great. Thanks for that update, Tony.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
I think at least certainly the lot coverage one is sort of hard to take on individually, right? The intent behind the lot coverage is different than the lot coverage, right? They included an intent and a solution all in the instructional motion. And so I think we need to, there'll be quite a bit of work to sort of unravel that and figure out the difference between the intent and the solution they proposed, and where we really get at it with a good solution. So I think that one's going to definitely take some time. And then, right, the motion on Airbnb type of facilities, right? That will involve both us and some other boards. So
right,
we'll need to figure out how we move that one ahead.
Yep. I need to dig into both of those a little further and come back to you guys with some ideas. But... all right, I think that's all.
All right.
It's great to see you. Thanks for having a meeting the Monday of
Folks
Thanksgiving.
if folks haven't driven down Main Street, South Main Street, the building got demoed today. So there was all kinds of little caterpillar guys on moving things around, and nothing left on the site. So.
Yep. It's happening.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. Lots of things happening, right?
Yes. Too many things
right.
to count on one hand.
Yeah.
All right. Have a happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
All right.
Right, same to all of you.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, yeah. Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? I saw that from Pam. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
All right. Good night, everyone.
You too.
Good night.
Good night.